There is a term in politics called the October surprise, which refers to a planned or unexpected event that could sway an election either way. It was first used by Ronald Reagan's campaign manager back in 1980 when talking about a possible deal to free American hostages in Iran. The terrorists were keeping the Americans, you remember, as prisoners to make a point that they would not let them go free to then President Jimmy Carter. Well, this year it seems the October surprise came in the early summer with a series of head-spinning events, including an attempted assassination and a career-defining debate performance.
The stage is set in Atlanta.
This is an important night for both President Joe Biden and former President Donald Trump.
In the end, it might come down to 6 seconds.
With the COVID, with dealing with everything we have to do with,
as President Biden appeared to lose his train of thought.
We finally beat Medicare.
It was a vicious debate.
Republicans really having a field day, saying that they thought this debate presented Biden as weak and not up to the job.
It was not the night President Biden had hoped for.
57% after the debate say they had no confidence at all in his ability to lead the country.
I know, like millions of Americans know, when you get knocked down, you get back up.
Biden spent the entire week at Camp David resting, working, studying. He studied very hard. He studied so hard that he didn't know what the hell he was doing.
I will never turn my back on President Biden.
Stepped down after the debate performance last night. Should he step aside?
I'm with Joe. As I've said before, I'm with Joe.
Biden told at least 2 people his next few public appearances are critical.
We understand the concerns. We get it. The president did not have a great night.
I screwed up. I made a mistake.
President Joe Biden is in it to win it.
He's staying in the race.
Was this a bad episode or the sign of a more serious condition?
It's a bad episode.
5 current House Democrats now calling on Joe Biden to step aside.
Damage control continues tonight for President Biden.
Biden wrote a letter to House Democrats and said he's firmly committed to staying in this race.
But if any of these guys don't think I should run against me.
Has the president been treated for Parkinson's? No. Is he being treated for Parkinson's? No.
Joe has made it clear that he's all in.
What's Joe Biden going to do? I am running, and we're going to win.
All eyes on tonight's presidential news conference.
It is unscripted, and reporters will be asking him questions.
In response to the very first question he faced, President Biden got the name of his own vice president wrong.
I wouldn't have picked Vice President Trump to be vice president, but I think she was not qualified to be president.
Coming on the air with breaking news right now. We're getting word that former President Donald Trump, during a rally in Pennsylvania,
We heard a series of popping sounds.
Former President Trump clutched his right ear and ducked behind the podium, whisked off stage. He raised a fist and mouthed fight. A shooter perched on a building adjacent to the venue opened fire.
Crazy there. I mean, it was so scary.
One person in the crowd was killed.
I saw the man that was hit in the head, and there was a lot of blood.
Former President Donald Trump showered with a hero's welcome after surviving an assassination attempt. 50,000 attendees and 2,400 Republican delegates in Milwaukee today for day 1 of the RNC. I'm not supposed to be here tonight.
I heard a loud whizzing sound and felt something hit me really, really hard. There was blood pouring everywhere, and yet in a certain way I felt very safe because I had God on my side. I felt
today, the current resident of 1600 Pennsylvania Avenue, the man with millions of supporters in every state in the union, realized the rigors and demands of a presidential campaign are simply too much to bear. So, Joe Biden is out. I believe it is in the best interest of my party and the country for me to stand down and to focus solely on fulfilling my duties as president for the remainder of my term.
The endorsement by President Biden of his number 2, Kamala Harris, to become the new presidential candidate was not much of a surprise.
Today, I want to offer my full support and endorsement for Kamala to be the nominee of our party this year.
The Vice President of the United States, Kamala Harris.
Vice President Kamala Harris taking the reins of the Democratic Party Monday as the presumptive Democratic nominee.
Joe Biden's legacy of accomplishment over the past 3 years is unmatched in modern history.
Vice President Harris tonight securing enough delegates to win the Democratic nomination for president.
The president called in with a message for Harris.
We're still fighting in this fight together. I'm not going anywhere. And I want you to know you've always had my back, and I promise you, I will always have your back.
It is my intention to go out and earn this nomination and to win.
What a wild month in our nation's history. And how has it affected the shorter than usual race for the White House? We're going to talk about that right now. Joining me, ABC News Political Director Rick Klein and Deputy Political Director Averi Harper. We've never had you on at the same time together. I don't think you've ever been seen together at the same time.
That's not true.
You're everywhere in the country. This seems like a year ago.
Oh my God.
It was 3 months ago, and everyone thought, oh, this is not enough time for a campaign.
Yeah, it's wild, and as I saw those clips play, Bill, I don't even remember half of it, and I think the country kind of went through this traumatic experience, and yeah, it set up this very short, this very compressed, very harshly negative and partisan general election that we've seen and now culminates over the next week or so.
Very partisan, and yet we think it went fast, but it really seemed like it took a long time, didn't it?
Right. I mean, I think about the earlier race between former President Trump and President Biden, and this is a completely different time that we find ourselves in, and still no one knows what's going to happen. We could be sitting and watching history come with a President Kamala Harris, should she be elected, or we could be seeing former President Trump return to the White House, and that would be history too.
And of course, a lot of people thought, I'll ask you first, Averi, a lot of people thought, we should have had a real primary season where the party really gets into this and they figure out who's the best person, et cetera, et cetera. That seems like a long ago debate as well.
Definitely. I mean, these parties can figure out who they want to be atop their ticket, and that's exactly what happened. I don't think there was really time for Democrats to be able to go through the long, drawn-out process of a full primary season with just a few months to go until Election Day. And so we saw the party really coalesce behind the vice president and try to put her atop the ticket. And I think for many in the Democratic Party, they would say that this has created a new enthusiasm for their new candidate. Vice President Kamala Harris, we've seen her out on the trail in battleground states trying to turn out as many voters as she can, and we'll see what happens come election night.
It really does seem that they had their stuff together very quickly.
Oh, I was amazed by the way the Harris campaign, it was an absolute clinic that they put on to secure the nomination under those circumstances. They were ready to go, even though she never really trashed Biden and wasn't part of the pile-on. They had to get up and going, and there's been fits and starts at times, but I think it is remarkable to think about the timeline that existed. And Biden didn't give her a lot of an on-ramp here.
All right, let me ask you about what happens the next week, because that's the last week.
That's it.
What does each candidate have to do, in your opinions?
Well, I think it is a harshly negative campaign. You need to give people a reason to vote for you at the end of the day, and I think that means often not even trying to convince someone who's on the fence, because I think that universe almost doesn't exist. It's someone that's not thinking about voting right now. What's that last thing you can offer that says, okay, that's in my head, and that reminds me the urgency of voting. Voting against someone is fine. It's a perfectly viable way of winning an election, but the ultimate last thing that makes people, okay, this is why I need to do this, that last piece of urgency is key.
And so that means what, Averi? That means going into the big states that are very controversial right now, and they don't have real devices yet?
Well, I actually think that fear can be an effective method to turn out some of your voters, right? We've seen former President Trump utilize a dark message for the entirety of his campaign, and that has worked for him. That worked for him through the primary, and he's hoping that it's going to work for him through this general election. I think for both of these candidates, turnout is the name of the game at this point. And so we see both of them going into these swing states, these battleground states, trying to message about the issues that folks care about. That means the economy. That means immigration, crime and safety. These are issues that we see both of these candidates seeking to address as they try and get those folks out to the polls.
And one of the things that people see, apparently, is according to definitions of who the former president is. A fascist is what the polls show.
That was a remarkable nugget out of our new ABC Ipsos poll. 49% of the country says that they consider him a fascist. That's before the John Kelly comments even circulated. He's been calling her a fascist as well, but less than a quarter of Americans are buying that.
It's a big gap.
It's a big gap, and also among those 49%, 8% of people that think Trump is a fascist say they're going to vote for him anyway.
Get the last word on this, Averi.
Right. I think the former president has an unshakable hold on the Republican Party. The Democratic Party is trying to coalesce behind the vice president, and we'll see what happens come election night.
Averi and Rick, thank you. It's going to be quite a last week, and it's been quite a campaign so far. I appreciate your insight and coming on board.
Thank you, Bill.
Take care.